Genesis 1:26 and 27, God said, let us make man in our image. And when we study God's word, we are three. And the three is mental, physical, and spiritually. So as we look at each section, mental to me is the biggest piece, because you can have a mindset and say, oh, I'm lazy, I'm ugly, nobody cares for me. And when you build that within your mental capacity, then what that do, that has an effect on your physical. Your body say, oh, I'm tired, I can't do anything, because that's what we thought and that's what we spoke.
Hello, and welcome back to this episode of Hidden Parts, the podcast. My name is Shawn Monet. I'm your host, and our special guest today is Miss Shirley Mills-Dower. Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm so happy to have you with us, hanging
Yes,
out for a little bit.
I'm glad to be here.
Good, good, good. So today, Miss Shirley, I have been watching your work, and for those of you that are interested, Ms. Shirley is a certified health and wellness coach. Um, she also has a book that she'll talk about later on during the episode. But today, our episode is going to be called, you ready? What is so special about me? What's so special about you? It's a whole lot. So, what we're going to unpack is self discovery, self appreciation, self love, how to forgive oneself, the whole 9 yards. It's not just for women, it's for men. And, it will help us grow. So, let's just get into it. Miss Shirley, tell us about yourself.
Um, well, it come there's a time in your life where you really want to know, who am I? What
Mm.
am I about? What's important about me? And maybe 12 or so years ago, I started discovering, and it came about from a automobile accident where I was thrown from my husband's truck, and I received severe 21 lacerations in my head. I had 4 fractured ribs and a lacerated spleen,
Ooh.
and from all of that, it puts you in a different perspective of what's important and what's life really about. And from that, I started saying, well, we don't know when we're going to go, what's going to be our last day. So I started looking at how do we improve our body from the inside out, mentally, physically, and spiritually. So I started getting interested in um, holistic health, because that's the study of looking at mind, body, and spirit. And from that, I met some uh, very good experts on the subject. I spent thousands of dollars learning the process, and I took a training for a certified health coach. And from that, I was just like amazed on how much we don't know how our body talks to us. It constantly talks to us. For example, let's say if your fingers start cramping up, your body's telling you that you're missing something, some type of nutrients, something that's missing out of your system. But how often do we actually take the time to um, pay attention?
Hmm.
If something starts aching, we say, "Oh, let me go get me a Advil and pop a pill. And when we do that, we're just silencing our body, and our body's still going to have that same problem. So with studying and looking at biologists and different naturopath physicians and finding out, God created our body magnificent.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. And when I think about that, I often think about it all beginning in with self,
That's
right? I read somewhere in someone's book, I want to say maybe Miles Monroe, but
mm,
um, singleness
hmm
is the most important status to have.
yes.
Singleness. And I don't want people to misconstrue that. Singleness is not status in terms of whether you're married, dating, or what have you. Singleness is being one with yourself and understanding that you have to love yourself before you can love anybody else. And that's the most important gift that God gave us, and it's a gift that you can give yourself. So, in this conversation, I really would like to know what you think about a couple of things.
hmm
So, within the last 5 years or so, self care has been,
Mm,
promoted, and our mental health and well being has been something that we have now come to grips to understand is a thing.
yes.
Because I understand before, maybe my parents, you know, and before their parents, um, mental health wasn't anything that one would concern themselves with. They would call it something else. So
hmm
now it's here on the forefront and we have to deal with it, right? So we have self care, we have self love, we have self appreciation, we have a list of things that we owe ourselves first.
That's true.
So, in your opinion, what's the difference between each?
Well, um, we are mental, physical, and spiritual, and each piece have a part. Like in Genesis 1:26 and 27, God said, "Let us make man in our image." And when we study God's word, we are three, and the three is mental, physical, and spiritually. So as we look at each section, mental to me is the biggest piece, because you can have a mindset and say, "Oh, I'm lazy, I'm ugly, nobody cares for me." And when you build that within your mental capacity, then what that do, that has effect on your physical. Your body say, "Oh, I'm tired, I can't do anything," because that's what we thought and that's what we spoke. So um, mental, physical, and spiritually. And once you find out the mental, that's like you made reference to knowing who we are. Before we can love anybody,
Mm-hmm.
we have to be able to love ourselves. And how do we love ourselves? We have to know our true identity, who we are, and what's important to us. Because so many people, they worry about what Susie say or what John say they are. So they base their life around what somebody else think.
Mm-hmm.
But once we have a true identity of who we are and have a determination to love ourselves first and love people around us, and people that um, are our adversaries or people that pluck our last nerve, really find out, and we get to a point where we can say, well, maybe she's having a bad day, and we don't get offended by it. That's another part, getting offended by what somebody say or what people do. I've developed, and it's always an ongoing process of, if somebody shouts or whatever, then I don't get automatically get offended. I say, well, they must be having a bad day or something, and because once you develop a good feeling about yourself and your identity, nobody really can shake you.
I was about to say that because that kind of walks back into self love
Mhm.
and self awareness.
Mhm.
So once you know your makeup, you know that you are smart, you know that you're intelligent, you know all of those things. You don't really need anybody to affirm it. Of course, as human beings, we need affirmation, but if you know that you know already these things, it's more important for you to govern yourself accordingly. So when I say that, I mean, like you said, if someone says something to offend you,
Mhm.
it rolls off your back because you already know who you are, right? And then another very important thing is what I see, and it's portrayed in the media and on TV, and it really is horrible, but it's just what's exposed to us, and it is the need to be loved. Whether it be your mate or your friend or your family member, there's always this need to be loved. When also I learned from some book, um, like when someone tells you that they love you,
Mhm.
instead of saying I love you too, you probably should say thanks, but do you love yourself? Because if you can't love yourself, how can you love me?
True.
And it all kind of goes back into self-awareness, but the media spent it. It's like you have to earn
Yes.
this thing called love, when it's not, in my opinion, that
It's
way.
free. It's
It's
absolutely free.
it's so free.
Oh, wow. Because the world constantly tries to identify or give us our identity. But just like you said, once you know who you are, no one or nothing can shake you from that. Because you know who you are. Like the commercials. If you look at the commercials and things that they advertise on television, that if you don't have a $500,000 car, you're not
Mm,
important.
mm,
If you don't have somebody's name on your back or your feet, you're not important. So once you know who you are, none of that is important. In my day they used to have something called fish heads, tennis shoes with
oh, the
no
no
name.
name tennis shoes.
And we would uh, proudly wear them because it didn't matter. We didn't have to have a Nike or whatever on our feet.
Mm,
And I think with today's our youth, we need to get back to our true identity and what's really important, because the video games, the TV, YouTube, all of them is just saying if you don't have this, then you're not important.
mm. That's real. That's real. And self awareness tells you different.
Hmm.
Self awareness tells you different. So break down self care.
Well, once you identify, and one of the sections in my book is to identify that our body is the temple of the Holy Spirit. So from that means we need to have good stewards over our body. So what does that mean? What about the foods that we're eating? Um, Exercising, even basically drinking enough water. If our body is 75 to 80% water, then we need to consume enough water to keep our body flowing.
Help me, Lord. Help me, Lord. You know what? Let me just get it. Look, you're right, though. I struggle.
And see, what happens is a lot of people, they start getting feverish or what have you, and it's because their body's just plain dehydrated. They drink a soda or something else instead of drinking the right or enough quantity of just basic water.
Hmm. Does that produce dehydrated thoughts, do you think? Like your mind isn't working, clicking on all cylinders.
Because it's not getting that, because it needs basic water in addition to in addition to our body getting the right nutrients that it needs. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Y'all do better. We need a challenge. Speaking of challenges, and this also goes into self-love, but you just did a 5-day challenge on
Yes.
forgiving yourself.
Yes. Loving and forgiving yourself. And during the 5 days, we actually identified um, frustrations and fear and desires and dreams. And based on that, what is it that we fear? What do we want to happen? How do we feel about ourselves? And each day we had some type of journal prompt to write, from identify your fears, put them in priority orders. And see, the thing when you actually physically write things, then your mind start paying attention to it. And it registers that, oh, this is a fear. And it really, when you see it on paper, it really makes a difference. So for the 5 days, we did different prompts. Who do you need to forgive? What do you feel you need forgiveness for? And actually write those prompts. And by the end of the 5 days, even I myself identified a forgiveness that I need to do with one of my siblings. Wow, that's deep. That was eons ago. That's still hovering in my unconscious.
In the back of your
Yeah,
brain.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
So we can identify things that's on our conscious, like we can look and see that flower or what have you. But we have a subconscious and then we have an unconscious. And deep within that unconscious is things that might have been traumatized about, horror things, something that happened that our mind, and that's how magnificent our body is going to cover it up. And until we actually go in and expose it and bring it to the forefront, it's just going to be there. It's like all of a sudden you start howling and screaming and shaking. That could be something that's deep into your unconscious
Hmm.
that's there. And you say, well, why did I do that? So once we identify and we actually start looking at ourselves, once we say, who am I? What am I about? And identify the different issues and actually sit down and actually start. Um, I recommend everybody to start a daily journal.
Mm-hmm.
And on that journal, list um, at least 10 things that you're grateful for, whether you do it in the morning or in the evening. And when you look at that, little small things, I'm grateful that I was able to find uh, um, my apples that I wanted for today, or grateful for traveling mercies for my family, whatever it is. And then when we think and ponder on it, it really makes a difference in our outlook. Because the bottom line, if we wake up in the morning and say, oh, I have to go to work, oh, it's raining outside,
You're setting
or
the tone for
you
your
setting
day.
your tone for the day. So therefore, what happens is you in a down slope.
Spiral,
hmm
yes, that's so
at the
true.
beginning, but when you get up and say, it's a beautiful day, even though it's snowing outside, it's beautiful. Oh, I'm glad that I woke up this morning and I have this, and I'm going to do that. Everything positive, it really makes a difference because the mind is powerful.
Yes, Miss Shirley, gratefulness is everything. It does set the pace for the day. And then, if you take the title of this episode, What's So Great About Me? What's so great about me is that I am grateful. I'm grateful because even in the worst day that I might be having, there's someone else that's having an even worse
Yes.
day. So it's really, really important to be grateful. And thank you for reminding us of that. I journal too.
hmm
And it is very helpful to list what you're grateful for, but even just to journal your thoughts. Just to journal your thoughts so that on those good days that you're having and those bad days that you're having, there's some comparison.
Yeah.
And then when you get that journal from last year and you're flipping through it, you're able to see where you've overcome some obstacles or not. But you get an idea of,
Yeah. That's
what's
the
going
truth.
on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And embracing that we're not perfect people.
Well, society have said about um, not perfect people, but we're perfect according to how God has created us.
Okay.
So each one of us is unique. That's why everybody have different fingerprints. So you might have some skills, talent that I might have, and vice versa. So perfection is how what you think about what's a perfection. And how perfect. So when we strive to be outside of ourselves, that's what's most important. Trying to be outside of who we really
Mm.
are, or try to identify. Um, oh, look how she walked. That's a nice walk. And then we start trying to walk like that. Well, that's not us.
Yeah.
We are who we are, right? So, knowing our true identity of who we are makes our life so um, what's the word?
Free
Free.
and free flowing and
Yes.
easy to
Yes.
embrace because it's your authentic self.
That's right. That's the truth.
Yeah.
And as you were saying, us some of our identity goes back to our childhood, could be from our childhood, and that could be some things that's in that unconscious. And to give an example, I remember when I was coming up, I was always quiet. I was to myself. I wasn't for being in a group. It didn't faze me. I was raised in the projects, and what the group would do, they would take a nice hot bath, perfume themselves up, get dressed, and then they'd go stand on the corner.
Hmm.
And I would say to myself, what's the purpose of that? So I was a loner, I wasn't with the group. But one thing that I think that I'm an introvert too, and I think what helped me with that was I remember my mother had some girlfriends over to the house, and she said, Teeny, you got to watch those quiet ones because Shirley is quiet. You got to watch her. And I still remember that.
Hmm.
And that, I think, caused me to be, oh, well, I'm quiet. So I got to watch what I do or what I say. So that, I think, helped me to be a introvert, as far as that. So a lot of things is centered around what people say about us and what we really say about ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah. Power.
Mhm.
That tongue.
Yeah.
The dirtiest thing. The
Yeah. Yeah.
tongue.
The smallest and the dirtiest.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So embracing. How would I embrace an imperfection? Like we strive for perfection, and we
Mhm.
can be perfect in our. And we are perfect in God's
Mhm.
image or His
Mhm. Mhm.
sight, but there are things that we aren't so great about. So, for an example, let's talk about us both being introverts.
Mhm.
I don't feel like that's one of my strengths,
Mhm.
being outspoken and just always wanting to talk. That's just not a
That's me
strength
too. That's me
that
too.
I have, and I accept that, right? And there are other things about other people, yourselves even, things that you don't consider as your strengths, I will call an imperfection, but you still embrace those things. You embrace them. And I think it's important to embrace them.
And I really wouldn't call them imperfections. That's your uniqueness.
Mm,
That's who you are. So once and that's too, you have extroverts and introverts. So what's perfect about the extrovert? If they constantly got their mouth running, or constantly have to be talking about something or in everything. So when we look at what we consider to be imperfections, they really are not. They're just our true identity of who we are. And um, that's basically who we are. So it's no need to say, oh, well, I got to talk more or I got to do that. Because, like me as an introvert, I tell you, example. My one sister, she'll say, oh, I love that blouse. I like your shoes. She just can talk like she's known you for years. With me, if I enter a room and the majority of people that I don't know, I'm going to sit in case and listen to conversation, and then I'll decide whether I want to participate in with the conversation. And that's exact opposite of my sister. And I look at her, I say, wow, that's nice that she's like that. But I don't care. That's not me, so I don't care. And I don't think that anything's wrong with me because I'm not outgoing and talking and everything. I'm a thinker, so I'm going to say, I don't think I want to have no conversation with her.
She's talking enough. Let her go ahead and have the floor.
Yeah.
I feel the same way.
Yeah.
So that's a way to embrace
Yeah.
your own uniqueness.
That's
not
right.
imperfections, your own uniqueness.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's good. That's
Yeah.
really, really
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
So we talked about childhood and things that could stigmatize us or traumatize us in adulthood. And sometimes we aren't aware of them.
Right.
Sometimes we are just plain out not aware until something happens, and then it comes all to the forefront, and then we're forced to deal with something in a way we probably never would have imagined. So is there a way that you can kind of put the cart before the horse in that situation, prepare your mind so that you can embrace triggers more easier? Is there a way, or do you have any help for people that have that?
Basically that's where I'm trying to accomplish in 2024 is actually have challenges, workshops where people can identify who they are and their identity. And that means that we don't sit and just say, I am great. I am great. I'm the most best person in the world, but actually sit down and journal different things. Like you made mention of journaling with your thought. Well, that supervisor made me hot today, or I had a good experience with whatever, and actually identify and get our mind flowing, thinking about what it is that we're thinking, because the mind does not have the capability to really know the truth. So as we think, that's what we are. If we say I'm dumb, then your mind say, I'm dumb. So our mind cannot determine what's true or not. We have to identify and tell our mind that's not true, or that's the truth, and it makes a difference on how we proceed and how we look at perspectives of what's being said or what's around us, our surroundings, because we get distracted each day with a whole bunch of stuff, and from that, being able to really analyze that, that's not true, or, that's a good point, and actually get our mind going with that.
That's real. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So we could talk about this all day.
We sure can.
Literally. It's
Yeah.
so many topics. It's it's a lot to unpack about self.
Yes.
And I guess that's why it's self-awareness. The topic that we were discussing was self-awareness and why it's so important to unpack those things. And it's also important to know that you can't just pick a day. On Monday I'm going to unpack everything about myself.
That's true.
You got to pick and just got to go. It's an ebb and flow to it.
Yeah, how do you eat an elephant a little at a time? So as you go through, and you say, well, why did I say that? Well, why did I do that?
Mm.
And try to think and try to get into that unconscious and find out, what's going on? Why am I fearful of this? Why am I afraid? And actually find out within it. And then once we identify it, then we can tell our mind, don't think about that because that ain't important. That's not real. Yeah.
Wow. So tell us about your book. You referenced it, so let us hear about it.
I've been doing this for maybe about 10 or 12 years, and as I relate and do different projects and do different workshops, I met this coach, and well, that's another thing. Once we get accountability, somebody to help us make accountability for what we should do. We can say, "Oh, I'll do that tomorrow." Um, for a couple years, because I also am going to school, and I say, "Oh, I don't have time to be writing no book." So in January, was it of last year?
It was.
Um, I said, maybe I'll do it in the fall because I'm in school. I got all these classes. I got to do homework and all of that. And the Spirit just said, write your book. Tell the story so people can read it.
What's your title of the book?
It's a soulful wellness, integrating your body, mind, and spirit in your Christian life.
And where can we buy it?
You could buy it at on Amazon, all the bookstores, on Noble. Was it Noble? All the major bookstores. So it can be purchased.
Barnes and Noble.
Barnes and Noble, yeah. And it was somebody's Noble. So all the book distributors, it can be purchased because it's important. Because in there, I actually go back to who do you think you are? How were you created? Were you created in the big boom, or did God create all the things that we see? And what do you believe? And how do you evaluate and look at what your body needs and how you should be good stewards of your body? What different changes? Talk about the history. Even give information on what we need to look for. And that's from different workshops that I've done. So it gives you a well-rounded idea of who we are, because the bottom line that nothing changes until we change, and when we change, everything changes. So that really makes a difference.
It makes a difference, an important difference, because it's a choice. You have to choose.
That's right.
To do that.
That's right.
And once you choose it, the battle is over.
Yes,
it's downhill from that. Well, it's easy street. Let's just say that.
Yeah, because the bottom line, we have to get out of the boat, and we still set in the boat. Oh no! Look at that water. I can't get out on that
cold.
Water.
I can't
right?
Swim.
Yeah. But once we get out the boat and say, "Oh, this is fine," and go where we need to go, that's taking control of our mind, and our mind and our mind definitely don't want change. Our mind don't want change.
Lord,
so we have to force ourselves. Say, I'm going to do this, and that's how the book, so in 16 weeks, all of it just started coming together. All of the workshops and the talks that I did, it just came together. And sometimes I pick up the book and say, wow, did I say that? And did I write that?
So how did you celebrate yourself? Because that's also very important in self-discovery and self-awareness, self-love, and self-care. How did you celebrate yourself?
Well, for one thing, I identified and realized that I could do it. Build up confidence. That builds confidence if you get outside that boat and then you build confidence. As far as celebrating for myself, I have to decide exactly what it is that I want to do with the celebration. I'm just overjoyed from hearing people's opinions and what they read about the book, and that just reinforces the confidence.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot about celebrations, but I just wanted
Mm-hmm.
to inject in this conversation
Mm-hmm.
that it is important that we
Yes.
celebrate ourselves.
Yeah.
And we don't have to write a book. We could go swimming,
Mm-hmm.
take swimming lessons, I mean.
Yes. Yes.
We could,
That's a big fear.
yeah, it
People
is a
swimming.
big fear. Yeah, so no matter how small or large the accomplishment is, you should celebrate yourself. That's part of our
Yes.
journey. I want to ask your honest opinion because some people may view it as like being cocky or something like that. But is it okay to estimate your value?
Mm. Well, if you don't estimate it, who's going to estimate it? You're going to let the world estimate and say you're worth this amount. So you have to, your value, and I think that comes too from a lot of our religious beliefs, that you don't pride and everything. That I don't think that's really effective because when you have the confidence and you know your skills and you putting your skills and your talents to use, then that really identifies who you are and it's not cocky. That's giving you confidence. The other flip side to that cockiness is your confidence because you do something well. Cockiness is you shoot off your mouth and can't do anything right. Or you constantly another key is if you constantly criticizing and saying what somebody else can't do or not doing. That's cockiness. But when you can identify and have the confidence that you do your job well, you're progressing well, then that's just your way of identifying and being, um, giving yourself brownie points that's well deserved. So we need to stop. And that's one thing that I used to deal with, and every now and then it creeps up, worrying about what other people think.
Yeah, because it gets into that family of being humble, and the
Mm-hmm.
way we were raised is like
Yeah.
you want to be humble, but it's like one of those sticky situations because
Mm-hmm.
you want to be humble,
Mm-hmm.
but you also know
You
your
know what
stuff.
you know. You know
Right,
what you
right.
know.
So it's got to be a healthy
Yes.
in between,
Yes.
and it's hard, for a lot of people to say, I'm good at something, but the world will
Mm-hmm.
misconstrue it as that person being really cocky
Mm-hmm.
and they should be humble.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, but what makes the difference is, you know that you well at doing something, and you just do it. Cocky is like, you know, I can do 500 laps around the park. You get cocky saying what you can do instead of demonstrating through action what it is that you do. That's the difference of having the confidence and being cocky. Cocky people brag on themselves. But when you just do and you're good at it and you're successful and you're helping others and you are showing that you care, that's showing your confidence. That's not being cocky.
and your self awareness.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep.
Okay. So this was very interesting, and I always like to end my shows by leaving have my guests leave some encouraging remarks. Um, Again, we talked about it over and over again about how broad this topic is, but it's something, that every now and again we need to hear, about how important it is to be aware of oneself and love oneself forgive oneself. So, what can you leave us with?
Well, knowing who you are, identifying who is Shirley. What is Shirley about? Identifying your strong points and your weak points, and not get beat up about the weak points, because as your strong points, you're going to constantly move towards whatever it is to build up. There's something called neoplasticity, where when you learn different things and you're able to increase your knowledge, then your mind say, "Oh, I didn't know I can do that," and you have the confidence to do it. So know your true identity, know who you are, and don't worry about what people going to think, because that's our biggest thing. Because we as social beings, we want to be accepted normally,
Love.
and loved, right? But to what benefit, to what extent? When you want to be loved, but then you sheltering yourself up because, oh, I can't say that because they might think I'm cocky, or but to be yourself, and just like we teach our youth, you be a leader instead of a follower. And if you have to walk that road by yourself, well, be it. So know your identity. Identify your strengths and your weaknesses, and move to incorporate both of them so that you can be a well-rounded person in terms of who you are.
That's awesome. Wow. Whew. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for spending time with us here at the Hidden Parts Podcast. I welcome you to watch this episode and any other episode that we've recorded on my website or YouTube channel. The website is www.the-inner.me. You can also follow me on socials. Instagram is at the Hidden Parts Podcast, or you can find me on Facebook, the Hidden Parts Podcast. Whatever you do, please subscribe, like, and share, but more importantly, come back. I will make sure to include Ms. Shirley's information in the bio or the description of this episode. Until next time, take care, stay blessed, love on yourself, because that's all you got. Remember, singleness is the status to strive for. Singleness is so important because you need to take care of oneself. And once you love oneself, you can love everybody. Remember, just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not there. I'll see you next time. Sean Monet, Hidden Parts, the podcast.